Hello YouTube. Today I want to talk about a problem that I run across with a couple of Pentax M series. This one happens to be an MV. This is an ME Super. Both very similar, but do a lot of different things between the two models. The MV is, you probably already know, very simple, very basic, sophisticated for its time, very small. The ME Super was the higher end, and it did a lot of stuff. You could work it in automatic, you could work it in manual, it had all kinds of features that were, well, I don't know how useful they were, but sure was cool. But what I wanted to talk about was when I got this one, I bought it and ultimately ended up using it for a parts camera, or starting to. I didn't pay much for it because I bought it in unknown condition. The problem with it was that I would go to cock the film and it would get stuck. It would only go a little bit. It wouldn't advance the film. It wouldn't set the shutter. It wouldn't do anything. I've since corrected that, but I've discovered that with a couple of MEs that I've had over the years. The advance lever will go to a certain point, stick, and that's all you get out of them. So when I took it apart, I found I'm going to use the ME Super as my demonstrative machine, because this one it has a whole slew of problems, and I'm not going to fix it. What I discovered is that, among other things, this camera had been messed with before. Somebody else had taken it apart. I thought that the problem might be in the top because there's little small gear works in there. I took off the bottom first, and now this is not what you're going to see when you take the bottom off. Let me go ahead and actually take the bottom off of this one. It's got, well, it's supposed to have 3 screws. So you take those screws off, bottom comes off, and that, I've improved marginally my light here. This is what you're going to see. If I can get it to focus. Well, I guess that's as good as it gets. And now, most of what's going on is going on right here. I don't know what all of this stuff is called. I can only tell you that there's a lot going on. Now this is the MV. The ME Super has a bunch of extra stuff right here that's all centered around the automatic, or the automatic winder, the attachment winder, and that's what that stuff is for. But this is what you're going to see in an MV. So what I did was I removed this arm, I removed this, I don't know what you call this stuff. I removed all that to get it down to why this damn thing won't focus. I'm just too close, I guess. I got it down to this point. The arm is gone. The gizmo here is gone. This one does have the winder, but I've taken out the extra stuff that's over here. And long story short, what I discovered was between, well, in any case, this is the center of the winding arm. This one happens to have the winder lug on it, and almost directly across from that is this small lever. I don't know what this is called either, but I only know that there's a hole in one of the protrusions on this thing right there. There's a tiny weaselly little cheesy spring that bridges this gap and keeps this thing pulled up like this. Now that spring is so delicate that almost anything will make it stretch, bend, go out of shape, and if it's off by even a tiny bit, this thing won't pull up where it has to be. Now, because this is broken, I have to make it work. So I'm going to show you. When that thing is working correctly, this is pulled up, and this tip will drag along the serrations on whatever this part of the winding mechanism is called. And I think you might be able to hear it. No, you're not going to hear it. So far as I can tell, the only function this thing serves is to prevent it from back winding, so that you could actually, I suppose, take short strokes if you really want to. I don't see any reason to. This is a single stroke camera, and it's a relatively short stroke, but there's a good way to demonstrate it. This would be the spring holding this little gizmo back, and if that spring isn't there, that thing will unwind itself. Let me do this again. But if you fully wind it, with or without that spring, it won't unwind itself because it locks in another position. Now, what I had discovered was, I gotta fire this thing off. What I discovered was that spring had lost so much tension that it was staying up, like it was free floating to a certain extent. So instead of doing this like it was supposed to and preventing the back swing, it had actually gotten up into this position. So the spring hole is, we'll say, at the 3 o'clock position. It's supposed to be here, and the tab that stops the back roll of the winder is here, and this is where the spring should be looped. So if, here we go again, reset this thing. So if that thing gets in there, or it'll stop, because if it goes past that point, the spring will pick it up a little bit. But what was happening with my camera, and incidentally this one too, was having to work this thing manually. It was getting stuck in the wrong position. It would get caught, so it would only, I'll hold that there, it would only stroke out to a certain point and wouldn't advance any further. So, still running? Yes. Long story short, I totally removed the spring, pulled that thing around so that it's completely, it doesn't touch anything. Anywhere around here it doesn't touch. And I get a full stroke. That's what I did with this one. I don't see what else this thing could possibly do other than ratchet on here and prevent a back wind. When it winds, but it's supposed to lock into its wound position. Like this one does. Oh, okay, I'm wrong. It does backwind, but it fully advances the film and then rotates back. And if you can see that, you'll see that that little swinging thing, the spring hole is here, the tab that does the work is now up here, and it works fine. When I got it, like I said, it would get to this point and jam. Now, this thing won't multi-stroke because that tab isn't there, but a full stroke. will work. And I don't see, as I said, I don't see that this does anything else. I was going to remove it, but then I realized underneath it is two arms, at least two arms, that are sprung that have to perform the job of the advancing mechanism, whatever it does. And without that, I'm going to guess that the camera will not be functional. So there's 100 things, well, more than 100 things that could go wrong with this camera. This one has, I think, some trouble up here. The master control knob, I guess you'd call it, has a problem. I think there's some gearing trouble in there. There's a lot of things that could go wrong, but this one, I cured the short stroke, I cleaned it up, and now I have a functioning camera. I did put batteries in it, and the internal computer works. I don't know how accurate it is, but it does allow for greater and lesser light to affect the shutter speed. So, I know this has been kind of wordy and repetitive like all my videos, but I thought that was interesting and I thought I'd share that with you.